Okay, this is a couple of days, maybe a week, after the installation of the Banks Ram Air. Everything works great. Seems like I'm getting a little better gas mileage, around a mile, maybe 3/4 of a mile per gallon. We'll see that. It's going to take a long time to figure that out, though. Now I can hear the turbo, which I never used to be able to hear, so now it's what is it? It's probably around 5 psi or 5 pounds of boost, anywhere between 5 and 10. I can very clearly hear. Customer service is fantastic. This doesn't have anything directly to do with the install, but it does have to do with when I ordered it. Within about probably an hour and a half of my ordering it, I had a phone call from Banks verifying my order, asking what sort of vehicle I had. So basically they were double checking to make sure the customer doesn't make any stupid mistakes and order the wrong thing. Banks is doing some great stuff. Check out on YouTube the Banks channel, because what they're doing right now is they're taking a look at differential covers. And if the differential covers are actually doing more harm than good than the stock cover. It's a very good series. Gail Banks is basically hosting it himself. And it interests me a lot because I have the AFE Power differential cover on mine. And I am almost certain, as the way these are going, and I think there's about four episodes so far, and they haven't finished all of the testing. But I'm pretty sure I'm going to be ripping that thing off of my truck and going back to the stock differential cover, because the new ones look to be actually detrimental to your differential, even though they're putting more fluid and blah, blah, blah. The inside of the differential cover is square now instead of rounded. And I'm not going to go into any more detail because Mr. Banks does a heck of a lot better job of that, naturally, as you'd expect, than I am. But anyway, with that said and done with, let's go get this thing done. Okay, well, here's what I'm going to be installing pretty soon. It's the Banks Ram Air for the Ram. Got it as a will call pickup directly from Banks, since I'm in Southern California. Had my son-in-law actually head over and pick this up for me, so I saved the $20-some on the shipping, because it's really not very far from where I live, about 60 miles. But this is what's going on into the intake. And in a few minutes I'll show you what's going on onto the exhaust. Alright, so I've done an unboxing of the Ram Air Kit. And you see we have our manual on the top of our box. Tube that goes down to the turbo. The rubber couplings, which you see up here and again here. One for the top, one for the turbo. You have the filter down here, which I have to say I'm a little surprised. It's oil, or an oiled filter, because they're more efficient. But no oil accompanied the order, so I'm going to have to check into that. I've got some K&N stuff on another truck of mine, and I have the oil if I need to use it, but kind of surprised it wasn't included. And of course, then we got the box right here with replaces the filter box at all. And of course, if we get down, you have the Banks Power stickers, which are obligatory to put on the vehicle once you've mounted it. And of course, you don't have to, but I'm going to because I can. And they're included, so why waste them? Here we have a bag full of hoses and clamps and screws and butts and bolts and sundry things. So we'll get to it and see how it goes. Okay, so the first thing that the directions tell you to do is to take off this the bolt right here, and then unscrew this. You have to take the mass air sensor, and I think that's a temperature sensor, but I'm not entirely sure. Take these two sensors off. Have to be reused. You have to unscrew these screws here and a screw here, because these sensors are used in the new setup. And so we'll get to it, and we'll take this little bugger off here, and get right back to you. Something to mention is the red clip that we got here. It's a locking clip, and all you do is take your screwdriver, push up from the bottom, That unclips it. And you just press the clip in here and it'll slide right off. And you see, that just came right off. Just push right here, comes right off. This guy is a little bit different. Does not have a lock on it. It does have the clip. So we do this, and it comes off. Now, according to the directions, we're going to have to trim this back and cut this back to about here, because the separation in these sensors on the new system is a lot further away than that. So we need some additional line here, so we'll be making that happen. Now I've taken off the top, which just slipped right off. Two little clips here, one there, and one right here. I just flip those suckers down, unscrew this, pull that back, unplug your clips, and it comes right off. One interesting thing to take note of here is the stock air filter. And I didn't replace mine that long ago, and it's not in bad shape. But take a look at the difference between the two. And you can tell that this guy's going to be pulling a lot more air than this guy is, primarily because of the size of the box and just the overall design. But the oiled filter is a better filter, and it's going to filter a lot cleaner than this is, providing cleaner air to the engine anyway. And let's see, what's our next step? Next step, according to the directions, is to take this box right here out. So we've got the bolt right here, and I think it's going to pull right up. We'll see how that goes. Okay, this guy's a 13mm bolt. And make sure you're taking it off, not putting it on. I have pneumatic tools, but sometimes I just like to do everything by hand. Nice of round to provide this nice little place to put bolts and things right here at the top of the engine. Now we're going to see if this comes out. We'll see what else. Okay, below this thing there's two rubber grommets, one in this corner and another one right over in here. Can't really see the second one, but according to the directions, they give some resistance when you're pulling it out, so let's see how it comes out. Okay, here's the box. You can see that one. It's quite a bit bigger than this one, so we're going to get a lot more airflow just from that reason. One thing that I did that directions didn't talk about is I unhooked the hose right here and tucked it out of the way over here, because it runs right across here, and it just gives us a lot more room to deal with this bolt, and I'm able to use this as a handle to help yank it and pry it up out of there. So let's see what the next step is for the directions. Alrighty, next thing it says to do is to take these grommets out, because apparently they've sent us new ones. Let me use my stronger hand. It says you might need a tool, but no, it popped right out. Let's see how this one comes up. And that one popped out. And since I don't care about it anymore, we're not going to worry about it. So, next thing that comes out is this little bugger. Now, I've had this out before when I was working on the EGR cleaning, which is the part of the 67.5. And I'm going to take this whole thing out all the way up to here. It's much easier. Or maybe I won't. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. The bottom portion of it, it's sometimes a little pain in the butt to get to. So we'll see how that works and get right back. Alright, next thing we're going to do is loosen the band clamp that's holding onto the turbo, and that's the little guy right there. We're going to loosen that up, and we have to take off this this hose right here that's going across. It's an air hose. It goes up to the CCV. So we're going to loosen that, and then figure out what we're going to do about this hose, see what's the easiest. Okay, something I didn't mention was that clamp down there is an 8mm. So use an 8mm socket for that. And what I'm choosing to do is to remove this entire hose and bracket all the way up to the CCV. It's just so much easier instead of having to reach down and struggle with a clamp. that doesn't seem to want to release completely. What I'm going to do is I'm going to unscrew the nut you see right here, which is an 11 millimeter, and the whole thing will and undo the hose clamp up here, and the whole thing will pull out with the entire assembly, and I'll show you that in a second. Okay, turns out that the bolt that went into the bracket right here is actually a 10 millimeter, not an 11. And as I said, it's much easier to undo this hose clamp, pull it off, pull this off. Now you have this whole thing here that's loose. And all you do is give this a good wiggle, and the whole thing will come right out. I've got my radiator filter lines in the way here, so give me a second. I'm just going to feed around those and we'll get out of here. And here we are. Whole thing came apart, comes right out. No worries, no muss, no fuss. And I'll tell you what, that's a whole heck of a lot easier than getting to those two clamps. Rubber hose is around a lump in the metal hose, and the clamp wouldn't go over the top of that very easily. So I just elected to take the whole thing off. It's actually simpler. Alright, so undid the little bag full of parts, and we've got a series of clamps. One large clamp, section of hose, which I imagine is that vent hose that I just was messing with. You have a bracket which goes on the box, assorted nuts and screws. You have a new, that's probably a mass sensor gasket there, and two new sets of these which go in where we pulled the other ones out, and that's actually the next step. Okay, next thing it says to do is to install the rubber grommets, and they're threaded, so these are going to actually hold it a lot tighter than the old one, and they simply fit right in and go there. Next thing it says to do is to finger tighten the bracket onto the unit, which is onto the box, I should say, right here. And the box is going to go in like that, and it has this vent space opening right there to suck in all the air. So let's see if that is the next step for install, or if we got something else to do. Okay, the next step actually has to do with this little guy right here. Directions tell us to go to the factory airbox and to remove the grommet from here. So that'll come off the bottom. Push that little guy through the top. Whoop, there he is. And I imagine we're going to be putting that right back into right here. And it's going to be a lot easier with two hands, so I'll be back in a second. Okay, well, got that on there. Almost put it on backwards. The narrow spot goes on the top, and grommet then rubber just pushes through, and the grommet fits through. I found it a lot easier to take the metal bracket off to do that, so that's probably something you want to change to the directions, is to take this and put that in there before you attach it to the box. We're going to put the box in here, but it warns us to be careful about this line right here and this little guy right here. It says that you may have to bend them slightly and that's if they're in the way. So let's see how she fits in there and see if they're in the way. Okay, we're in here, and I did push down on this just slightly, so it's probably 1/4 of an inch lower than what it was. There's no bends, there's no real stress in it, so. And it's about probably, I don't know, the rubber line around it, which is this thing here, is touching the box here, but the box is all the way down, and I don't have a problem with that. It doesn't say that we have any problems here, so we're putting in these two screws down here, which they provide, and one that goes there, and we'll be right back. Okay, next thing we've got to do is put in these 15 millimeter bolts. One goes right there, the other one goes right here, Push down a little bit. This threading starts right away, easy peasy. So we'll tighten those up, and then the next step after that is to tighten this little guy that's under here. So we'll be doing those few things, and we will be right back. Very nice and snug. So I would suspect on to moving the sensors. Okay, well I guessed wrong. Next thing that goes on is the Banks hose that goes on to the front end of the turbo. Goes on just like that. Diagram or the picture in the instructions shows the Banks facing up, so they can show off their name, which is fine with me. If I'm going to the effort, I'll do the same thing. So we're going to put that on there with one clamp right now, and the second clamp will follow. Okay, well, there it is. Slid on there. It has to be up against the turbo, of course. And then you use the 8mm nut. Get the clamp on, tighten it down, make sure you're even all the way around, and we'll see what the next step is. Kind of suspect it's more of the intake hose here. Okay, put the CCV pipe back on, the breather hose that goes down to the intake. But anyway, next thing to go on is the hose clamp onto there, and then the breather. So let's see how this all goes together. Let's see if I can get this with one hand. It's easy enough. The first one that went on took a little Hogwarts magic to get it nice and tight, because it fits on there very snugly. So now this goes on, and this is going to take a little bit of twisting. I'm going to use both hands for this, and because I got the oil filter right there that's kind of in the way. So I'll be back in a second. Okay, that took a little bit of twisting to get it on there, but probably should have showed you beforehand that there is a lip that's right here, and I pulled it out a little bit so you can see it, and that has to be snug up against the rubber. So it's going to go up like that, and then snug that down. Again, the clamp is quite snug before you ever even start tightening it down, and I'm going to do that here in a second. You can see the connections here and there for the breather hose that still has to go on. Alright, that was a pain in the ass. Okay, to get this thing lined up, and to make sure that band, the one on the intake side, not the turbo side, but to make sure that that band was actually grabbing all the way around where it should, I had to crawl under the truck and reach up with a screwdriver and nudge it into place. That's because the band clamp they provide should be about a ½ inch longer. That'd give you a lot more to work with there, but it barely fits, and you can see how much or how little is actually pulled through there. So you can tell that to back it off, pretty bad. Okay, anyway, let's see what's next. Oh, actually, what's next was to line this up, or get it close to lined up, and then tighten that clamp, which I did. So let's see what's the next thing. Alright, breather hose is on. You can see it goes all the way on down there. So that might be why they say that it doesn't take any clamps, because that's a pretty tight fit between there, and it's just a breather hose. So I don't think there's going to be a whole lot there, but I still might, after the fact, buy some clamps and put them on there. Although clamping the bottom, that's plastic, so you'd have to be kind of careful about clamping that too much. The top, not that big of a deal. But then again, that might be why they didn't include it in the first place. All right, back to this. Now that it's lined up, looks like we got the take the top off, put the hose on, and see where we go. Well, I suspect I used the wrong hose clamps down on the compressor. These are the other two that are remaining. You can see these hose clamps are ample in length to do this job. However, since I've already fought that battle down there and I have it all together, I'm not going to change the hose clamps. I don't see any significant difference in it. But I wish they would have made it clear to use the longer ones down there. But anyway, I didn't notice at the time that they were two different sizes. But anyway, so if you're doing this, use the longer hose clamps down by the turbo, and you won't have the same, well, you won't have to call Harry Potter to get the damn thing put together. So, alright, let's put the top on. I've already connected this onto here. Now, because there's not a whole lot of distance between this and that, I imagine that this is going to compress a whole hell of a lot when I put it on there. So, well, that will be the next thing, and tightening up that clamp. Again, clamps 8mm, and we'll put that on here in just a second. Alright, let's see how it goes. Yes, I know I don't have the hose clamp on there right now, I'm just kind of looking. Yep, okay, hose clamp goes on. Try to balance that. Well, this is a good... the directions also mention the grounding wire here. It says that you may have to bend it out of the way. I don't have to do that. There's ample room here between the bottom and the ground wire and all, and the side. Either that or mine's already bent. I don't know which, but anyway, don't have to do that. A little note when you're putting on the hose clamps: make sure that the nuts are pointing up like that, so you have something you can actually turn. Already did that once. Alright, let's get this fitted on here, and I will be right back because I need two hands. Alright, okay, so I did have to split this apart. It's held on by black tape here, which is underneath the plastic, so just undid the black tape, and these just separated right on back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut this. So I put it back down here, but I'm not going to do that until I'm sure that I have the lengths that I need on the top. So now we're to the inlet air temperature sensor, which goes here, and the map, which goes there. And if you happen to have a filter minder, I think that's what goes in right here. Mine does not have that, so they provide you a plug to plug that bugger up. So let's go take the old ones off, which are back over here. Yes, I'm painting. Oops, not there. It's over here. Okay, well, here it is. I'm going to have to take these off. Your inlet temperature and then the map. Make sure the map is facing the direction it is, which is going down, because it has to stay that way. And these are 7mm. And Banks provides you with 3 new screws to go in up here and here. So I'm going to take these off, unscrew them, which, like I said, is just a 7mm and just unscrews, and going to put them back in there. Oh, and besides, don't forget your gasket, which goes right there. Just getting ready to put the map sensor in. I thought I'd point out something I noticed. I almost got it backwards. Notice where the screw holes all are in the gasket. If you line it up the wrong way, your seal's not going to seal very well. So make sure you pay attention to that, which I almost didn't. Okay, map sensor's in. I haven't done the IT yet. I thought I'd pause, and this line here that I had to separate. It's not pulling, but it doesn't give you a whole lot of loose or length here either from where it comes down here. So I've looked. It's not near anything hot. Closest thing that's even warm is this, and it's got a shield on it down here. So that's a coolant line. So we should be okay here. Now for the IET. Here's the IET. Came out with a little tug, and it goes right into here. Make sure the screw lines up. Put in their supplied screw. Grab yourself a screwdriver that fits it. Screw that guy in. A little twist. And then this guy comes up, plugs in, and all the hard stuff's done. Now it's just a matter of putting in the vent. Or what I say, vent, filter. Okay, I got the filter on. The installation instructions talk about an alignment groove. You can see the groove. It's in the top. You have to make sure that the filter lines up with that, or when it goes down into the box, it's not going to fit quite right. And they certainly made up for the band, or the clamp on this. It's probably about 8 inches too long. So all we do is turn this to line it up with the groove, tighten this up, and put the top on and screw it down, and we should be done. So let me get that filter tightened up, and we'll see how it goes. Oh, and by the way, it is pre-oiled. Just didn't notice that. Okay, well, there we are. All finished. If I hadn't been yakking and carrying on and doing this, this probably takes about an hour. It's really not very hard to do. Very, very simple. Banks instructions are very clear, very good. I didn't always refer to them very clearly, but I was always referring back to them. So this is what we got here. Didn't even have to take off the bat wing. But we'll have to see how this works out, and we'll do a performance test after this is on, because I did one with my edge tuner beforehand. Okay, I neglected to mention the last thing. You may have actually seen it in the previous video, but you need to stick this guy on your truck when you're done. This is so when, if you happen to be in California and you go in to have it smogged, you have the CARB information here telling the state of California that they have approved this and not to go bug shit crazy deciding that this is not supposed to be there and fail you on a smog check. And then the other sticker is just simply to say don't discard that, reuse it, oil it, has the service information on it right there. 50,000 miles or 100,000 miles, I probably do it every 50 or sooner depending on what I feel like. So anyway, don't forget that. Okay, here we are running at high idle. It's at about 1500 RPM. I'm using the automatic high idle that the Ram's got. Okay, one thing. Started it up, and my edge immediately, immediately got a check engine light, CEL, whatever. My edge programmer told me exactly what it was, and it was the inlet air temperature sensor was too high, and the map was, it just said it was out of spec. So all I did was cleared the errors, shut the engine off, turned it back on again, and no more check engine lights. So I would imagine that the sensors just didn't like getting moved. And I also think that probably if you don't have something to reset your check engine lights, you'd probably just go ahead and drive it for a while, and that error, that CEL is going to go away. So anyway, there's the truck anyway. So we will be at this again when we get the monster exhaust.